Are the Detroit Lions Super Bowl favorites? Is it fair to say that, Hunter, or do you think I'm having a little bit of an overreaction here?
I think it is pretty fair to say that the Detroit Lions might be the Super Bowl favorites of the whole NFL, not even of the NFC.
Well, that's where, and again, this is where it gets crazy because, when you say that out loud, that almost sounds like it's like a jinxing statement of itself, but I don't want it to be. I want it to just be, look, the bottom line and the reality is the Lions are a ferocious unit, no pun intended, right? Like, I mean, the Lions have come and they are a fantastic unit. They're very fun to watch. They're complete on both sides of the ball. So with all that said, let's get into my points here. Look, first of all, we got to address just the obvious things we already know, but we got to just take it from an objective standpoint. We got wins versus the Rams, Cardinals, Seahawks, Cowboys, and Vikings. So, albeit, look, the bottom line is that's not like the greatest group in the world, right? Like it's not, but it's a solid one, and you have some solid wins in there. And your only loss came versus the Bucks in week 2, and as we've discussed before, it's kind of like the first couple weeks are kind of
But
it's
the Bucks
wild
have
card,
been a
right?
good team. Like last night they lost Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, but they have been a good team throughout the year.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So it's the thing. It's not like it's a terrible loss by any means. I would say they're a better team, albeit, but again, still, it's early in the season. It's kind of wild card. You don't know what to expect all the time. From an offensive standpoint, they averaged 411.8 yards per game, which is second in the league. 22 touchdowns scored, which is tied fourth in the league. 256.3 passing yards per game, which is third in the league. 155.5 rushing yards per game, which is fourth in the league. 2.76 time to throw, which is 18th in the league. So again, but I think when we're talking about the Lions, it's like it's kind of in between, right? It's positive, it's negative, but more than anything, it's more of the time it's positive, right? Like you're giving Jared Goff good time in the pocket, he gets to scan the field. It's not. It's more three out of four times he's getting it out quick. It's a good thing. And when he's not, it's just because he has time to scan. And you're like, okay, bet. It's not like again, it's not because we always talk about how a time to throw can be an anomaly thing. It's depending on the film. But for the Lions, you're not looking at it like it makes sense, right? Like they get the ball quick a lot, but there's also plenty of time he has to just sit in that pocket and chill, which is what you want. 68 QB pressures allowed, 27th in the league, but from a good perspective, right? Not like because again, that sounds misleading. 27th in a good way, like AKA fifth best. So, and then we'll flip over to the defense. 338.3 yards per game allowed, which is 18th in the league. 11 touchdowns allowed, 26th in the league, but again in a good way. So we'll say sixth best. From there, 245.8 passing yards per game allowed, 27th. So again, in that sense too, that's not necessarily the best. Like that is actually pretty relatively high, but again, it evens out when we talk about the rushing yards per game allowed, which is 92.5, which is fifth best in the league, and then 81 QB pressures, which is tied 14th. The D line is getting home a fair amount of the time, and we're in the upper 50 percentile, so it's not a bad thing. We'll move over to Jared Goff. Look, just on his own, Jared Goff's on another level right now. The Lions have scored more touchdowns, 18, than Jared Goff has thrown incompletions, 15 over the last 4 games. Shout out to Adam Schefter on that one. I don't know if he's the first person that tweeted that, but he was the first person I saw that tweeted it. So credit to Adam Schefter on that one. But in its own right, I mean, that's just an absolutely ridiculous stat, which also kind of correlates to my next point here. Look, Ben Johnson is in a different bag than other OCs right now. And again, we've talked about how maybe are they pulling out some of their best stuff a little too early, and is that going to bite them in the back in the playoffs? It could, but right now you're watching the Lions offense, and you're like, this is just another world, and they're humming on another level. And to put it as simply as possible, Ben Johnson just getting more creative than anyone else, I would say, and it's not even really close when you're watching the Lions offense. Final point here, because again, this is not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. You could spin it positively or negatively. I found a way to spin it positively, though. Look, the Lions do have a pretty tough schedule to close out the season, but it could leave them hardened and battle tested for the playoffs, right? But to kind of like just touch here on the good teams going to be playing, right? We're going to have to face the Packers twice, the Texans, the Bears twice, the Bills, the 49ers, and then the Lions one more time. I would say that that's one of the toughest, if not the toughest schedule to close out the year. But again, from the standpoint of, we're going to look at it positively. Like, that's the Lions, and they're a tough team already. You go into the playoffs having to face a lot of good teams. You come out more hardened. And yeah, you could look at it like they could face some injury. They could face, right? It could go either way. I chose to spin it positively because of my narrative that I do believe the Lions are the Super Bowl favorites at this point, given how well they play on both sides of the ball. So with all that said, Hunter, you let me know what you're thinking.
I think my thing is the Lions coming into the year, we knew that last year, after they lost that game to the 49ers, Dan Campbell was like, this may have been our chance, guys. Like, we may not get another chance. And you saw them go out and add very good pieces to the defense. You know, they traded for Carlton Davis, and then in the draft, they added pieces. They went and got D-line help. Obviously, you know, Aiden Hutchinson going down is a big hurdle that they're going to have to jump through. But the reality is the defense is playing ferocious. Like, if you want to look at the defense, like, it may not be one of the best units in the league, but they play like it sometimes, right? Like, if you look at it on paper, they may not be the best roster, like, from a defensive standpoint, but because of their, without sounding corny, ferocity, like, they hurt teams. Like, teams that play the Lions do not play well the next week after. So, if you look at how that will fare later in the year when a lot of players are beat up, and if they still can keep that energy and the offense doesn't take a step back because it's playing at another level right now, I mean, can you please tell me, besides the Ravens, what team is playing at this level right now? Like, a Lions-Ravens Super Bowl at this point in the NFL season seems like one of the most likely aspects if it's not the Chiefs side of the AFC.
Well, no, look, 1,000%. And to kind of just, because, now let's go into the more specifics of why that I think this, right? Because we already touched on the overview. Let's get into the specifics. Well, specifically, again, the O-line, if we're talking total unit, it's probably the best total O-line unit in the entire league. I mean, everybody on this O-line eats. The scheme is amazing. The running backs on top of it, the combination of Monty and Gibbs is just it's an O-line coach, it's an offensive coach, it's a head coach's dream, right? You get the perfect mix of lightning and thunder, like we always talk about. On top of that, Jared Goff's just playing amazing. We already discussed him. Sam Laporta hasn't been playing the best ball anywhere near
I feel like we
last
might
year.
see him more now that Jameson Williams is suspended.
I was gonna say, but also you could look at it like a good thing. It's like, yeah, like you don't have to force it too as much. He still is a really good blocker, and when he needs to eat, I still have complete confidence he's gonna eat. On top of that, I mean, look, the like I said, the O-line. I'm just gushing on the O-line because you know me, my trenches. The receiving core is amazing. Like the receiving core is amazing. Everyone does their job. They're all great blockers. They all get open. We know about Amon-Ra St. Brown, the cog of the offense, dare I say, because I mean, so many people could be the cog of this offense, but Amon-Ra is like the key crucial piece, right? Look, on top of that, we'll move over to the defense specifically because to your point, yes, they're going to miss Hutch a lot, as anyone would. He was the best pass rusher in the league this year, and I wouldn't even say it was necessarily close. I mean, from just a pure pass rusher win rate, from the bag and arsenal of moves, yeah, nobody's going to come replace Hutch. It does not matter. But on top of that, look, the interior of this D-line is fantastic, where when Ali McNeil's taking on two dudes and winning like he does, when DJ Reader's playing good like he is, the edge guys are going to find a way to start eating. They're going to scheme up pressures.
Yeah.
They're going to throw some fire zones in there like they will. And all the linebackers are playing relatively good ball, right? Like you got a really good like linebacker unit. Jack Campbell's making a huge jump this year. Yeah, your corners aren't playing the best. They're not, but it's okay because Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch over the top, or when you bring Brian Branch in the box, they have a recipe to stop the run. They play great in coverage. So they give the corners some wiggle room because they're going to play so good over the top of them that you can't really throw it over the top very often. To round it all out simply, the Lions are pretty much, in my opinion, at this point, the most well-rounded complete unit. I mean, I don't really think you could argue with a few other teams, but I think just from a complete standpoint, right now, this many weeks into the season, we are right heading into week 7. I call it for what it is. I would say that the Lions are the best unit in football, and I don't really necessarily believe that, in my opinion, it's to be argued right now. Yeah, it's not. I mean, I'm not going to guarantee it could be the rest of the year. Season ends today, though. Yeah, that's why I'm saying this. To me, the Lions are the Super Bowl favorites.
It's pretty funny because when you look at like statistically the Lions defense and the Ravens defense, they both really struggle in the pass game, but they're both very, very good in the run game. And if you can stop the run and, you know, make teams pass, like, that's great. I do think I just get concerned when you look at teams like the Texans, you look at teams like the Packers, you look at teams like the Bills, like the 49ers. I worry about the pass rush then, but like you stated, like Lee McNeil has taken a big step. Like he has progressively got better every year of his career, but this year it really seems like he's kind of laid it on, and that's when the extension came in. Like they are already solidifying like key pieces in this unit. And another piece that is kind of crazy because I was so frustrated when he fell to the second round was Brian Branch. Brian Branch has become so good for this team. It's not like he was like, oh, well, maybe Brian Branch should be like, he was going to be a good player coming out of college. And to come to this team like the Lions and be an impact player day one is just credit to the GM for being able to build this team that the way they have, because they did get questions for taking, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, Jahmyr Gibbs, all, I don't know how to say it. What are they called? Like,
just maybe
what's the buzzword?
Not good positional value.
Yeah, not good positional value or premier positions or whatever it is. But it's just like, but they got the right guys, so who cares? Like we're seeing it kind of this year with running backs. Like, oh, people didn't want to overvalue Henry or Saquon. Look at them. They're dominating the league. It's not an explosive passing league anymore. You need the running back. So, yeah, I don't know. Detroit Lions Super Bowl favorites, unfortunately for me as a Bears fan, but it's hard to not acknowledge what the Lions have been able to do with Dan Campbell, with Brad Holmes as their GM, and the way they have built this offense, built this defense. A lot of people were out on Jared Goff, and Ben Johnson was able to turn them around.
No, yeah. Again, complete top to bottom, Hunter. The ownership, the management, all the way down to assistant coaches, it's complete. The roster, it's complete. You have a square box of completeness. It's up to the Lions at this point to be the ones to finish it off. And I think, though, that's kind of my final point, and then we'll close this out. But look, the Lions have kind of an X factor that a lot of other teams don't have. Their fan base hasn't seen success in so long. And yes, you could spin that positively or negatively. Is it extra pressure? This, that, that. Look, real pros, they like that added pressure. They thrive for it. They live for that competitiveness. And if you're the Lions, you have that extra pressure on you. Pressure bursts pipes or it makes diamonds. And in the Lions case, you got to hope if you're a Lions fan, it's going to make diamonds this year.
Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the Detroit Lions Super Bowl favorites. If you don't know ball and want to know ball, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, let us know in the comments if you think the Lions are favorites out of the NFC or in the NFL to win the Super Bowl, or if there's a team ahead of them.